next speaker is Loretta Dignam. And Loretta is an award-winning Marketer of the Year who opened the doors of the Menopause Hub, Ireland's first and only dedicated multidisciplinary menopause clinic in December 2018. Loretta is the founder and the CEO. The Menopause Hub is Ireland's first dedicated multidisciplinary clinic, which includes a team of doctors, GPs and gynecologists, a psychologist, a dietitian and nutritionist, a woman's health physiotherapist and an acupuncturist. I'm sure nurses as well, Loretta, because you mentioned them earlier. And you are an advocate for menopausal women, and you have developed a program to support organisations with menopause in the workplace, awareness and education training and policy development. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Quite a mouthful, really, isn't it? First of all, congratulations and thank you for inviting me to today's event. I think anybody talking about menopause right now is being very progressive in tackling this issue head on. And hopefully I can enlighten you a little bit about menopause if you don't know that much about it already from a personal perspective, but also from a workplace perspective. So my personal journey was, or is, I was a woman who just a month before she turned 50, I had my last period. I didn't know it was my last period, to be honest, until obviously 12 months later, when I was then considered postmenopausal. Fairly soon after that, the hot flushes started. So I can say that absolutely before that, I knew nothing about menopause except no periods and hot flushes. So I knew I was menopausal. And that was the extent of my knowledge. I had never heard the word perimenopausal before that. And now when I look back through my 40s, I realize the number of different things that happened to me health-wise that were all associated with perimenopause, but I was completely ignorant. So I put up with symptoms for about 3 years of symptoms that I knew were associated with menopause. I felt like I described it as like a slow puncture, so I could feel the kind of energy seeping out of me. I'd have 20 to 30 hot flushes a day, hot flushes at night, the duvet was on, off, some night sweats, broken sleep and so on. And I was trying to, I'm a single parent, divorced, reared my 2 children myself, had a full-time, fairly senior job, and was trying to look after aging parents. And so I was in that sandwich generation. And then I had all this on top. So I tried everything natural because I was terrified of HRT, based on no information, I might add. And I knew somewhere kind of in the ether or something, or you pick up stuff and it's in the back of your mind, that it was dangerous, something to do with breast cancer. And I kind of thought that strong women power through. They don't need this kind of help. So actually, I'm not giving in to any medical solution. So I tried everything natural that was available. I tried sage, black cohosh, Don Kai. I bring along this magnet, which which I put in my underwear. 35 euro in boots, one for sale, barely used. And the reason I did was because it was supposed to help with hot flushes. Needless to say, it didn't give me much relief. And my daughter was going through puberty at the same time. So the hormones were flying and she could feel the heat radiating from me in the front seat of the car. So she'd, roll down the window for me and say hot flush, and I'd say yes. And when I was in the workplace, I would be giving presentations to senior management boards, and I would feel this, heat surge and so on. The tips of my hair would be wet. I'd be thrown off track of my line of conversation. I'd be embarrassed. I'd be wondering, could they see what I felt? But I didn't dare say anything because I was terrified that people would know my age. Whereas they probably could have guessed my age, give or take 5 years anyway. However, it wasn't the done thing to talk about menopause. So roll on about 3 years, I went to my GP, very lovely lady. She didn't know a whole hill of beans about menopause really, or HRT, but said it was a lot safer than it was considered, and the research had been debunked. So she put me on a patch of combined hormone replacement therapy, which, had she asked me a few more questions, she wouldn't have given me that solution. But I'm not sure that her toolkit was that wide, so she may have not had very many other alternatives. But she did tell me transdermal, which is through the skin, obviously, was better than oral. After about 3 or 4 weeks, I felt like I always did when I was on the pill and had the Mirena coil, progesterone kind of sensitivity, and took it off. I then went to somebody who was it was a different consultation. It was about an hour. It was very expensive, but I learned so many things that had been happening to my body and my mind and my emotions actually were related to menopause. And I emerged from that consultation armed with a whole load of information and started on my hormones. And within 3 months, I went back for a review. I was put on testosterone then. And ooh la la, felt amazing after maybe 4 or 5 months. And I got my old self back. I also understood the risks and benefits of HRT and was much more informed. It was then I was sitting in a cafe with a lady who was a few years old, well, a good few years older than me, and it was coming up to her 60th birthday, and she was telling me about her party plans. And she picked up a menu in the old Bewley's that had just reopened in Grafton Street, started fanning her face. And I said, God, are you okay? Do you need to go outside? Breath of fresh air, glass of water, you faint? And she said, no, I'm just having a hot flush. And I said, wow, how long has that been going on for? And she said, oh, only about 10 years. And I was gobsmacked because I felt this lady was highly intelligent, was a very successful businesswoman, and yet had not sought help. And that day I decided I was going to do something about this. So I was on the board of the Abbey Theatre for 6 years. I just stepped down this summer and I chaired their Gender Equality Committee. And what I learned from that experience was that the introduction of a gender equality policy, because there were so few female playwrights and artists, that by implementing a policy, you can actually make change, measurable change, and that also there's a ripple out effect into the rest of the theatre community. So armed with this bit of information and with my own personal experience of menopause, I decided to set up something that I felt was practical and helpful for women. And I set up an evidence-based clinic. I came from a non-medical world, so the corporate world, where I worked in marketing, communications and branding. And boy, was that a transition. And it was a complete roller coaster. And if I knew then what I knew now, who knows whether I'd have done it. But isn't that the wonderful joy of blissful ignorance? So the clinic is set up. Anyway, this isn't an ad for the clinic or anything. Really, I just want to talk to you a little bit about menopause. So I'm going to just take you through a couple of charts, and I just wanted to give you my own personal journey to show that I could potentially relate to you, or yours, or your staff. So we'll just very quickly share my screen with you and get the presentation. So here it is. So just pop it up. So yes, so I'm going to talk to you today about menopause, the case for change. So why does menopause matter? It's a very busy chart, I apologize. But basically, it's a large cohort of people are impacted. 50% of the population are going to be menopausal at some phase in their life, and every woman will go through menopause. Not every woman will have symptoms, but every woman will go through menopause. And the stats are enormous. And in addition to that, the other 50% of the population may be impacted. So by 2030, there's going to be 1.1 billion menopausal women globally, and 47 million women per annum coming into that cohort. And that would be 12.5% of the global population. In Ireland, that cohort accounts for 571,000 women and 350,000 in paid employment. In the UK, it's about 13 million women and 4.4 million in work. The average age of menopause is 51. The average age of menopause, which I'd never heard of, is 45. However, these are averages, so they can start earlier or later for women. The average length of the peri and postmenopause is 7.4 years. So we're talking quite a considerable amount of time. In terms of symptoms, so if you look up here on the chart, there are over 40 symptoms. We have a symptom checker on our website, which we give to all our patients in advance of the consultation. They're divided into emotional, mental, psychological is one group. The other group is physiological, and the other group is genitourinary. So there's a lot of symptoms. And if you don't know, if like me, you had very little information and knowledge, I didn't associate my UTIs with menopause. I didn't associate my very bad headaches, where I had to go for a brain scan. With my perimenopause, I didn't associate my dry eye. I ended up in the eye and ear A&E department 3 times, pains in my ankles, dizziness, fatigue, getting up to go to the loo in the night, and so on and so on. So there are an awful lot of symptoms that you would not associate with it. 80% of women will have symptoms. 50% would be moderate to severe. 25% will be severe or debilitating, and this is research from Ireland. 25% will consider giving up work, and 10% will give up work. So that's UK stats. And I have a piece of research running right now, and I know there's a piece running in the INMO as well, and I've worked with Steve on that, is to find out what those stats are for Ireland and within the nursing and midwife community. So that's a loss of talent, a loss of experience, and a loss of investment in terms of training and development. And realistically, this doesn't need to happen. So if I look back in the 1900s, the average age of menopause is 47. The average life expectancy was 49. Today, the average age of menopause is 51, and the average life expectancy is 83.6, so 84 years. So women will spend 1/3 to 1/2 of their lives postmenopausal. That's quite a considerable amount of time. And I guess the question is, you want to live that in your best health. So menopausal women are the wives, partners, mothers, sisters, relatives, friends, colleagues, bosses, teammates, peers, and so on. So it's not just a societal issue, it's a workplace issue, it's also an economic issue. I conducted research last year in September, October, among 1,250 women in Ireland, so a very sizable survey base. And 80% of the women said that they were or are unprepared for menopause. I was one of those women. 66% said that they knew nothing or very little about menopause beforehand. I was one of those women. I'm not sure if hot flushes and no periods really counts. And I would consider myself to be reasonably intelligent, reasonably well educated, and it hit me out of the blue. I also considered it for much older women. 79% of the women rated the level of information support for menopause in Ireland as poor or very poor. And I have to say I concur with that. Hence, I set up my own clinic and menopause in the workplace business. And the level of tabooness, if there's such a word out there, was seen as to be about 8 out of 10 for women. So huge statistics, and really we need to do something about educating, making people aware, and being supportive of this phase of life. So what is menopause? I'm preaching to the medical community, so you probably know all this, but I'll do it in the very briefest. And what I do is talk about menopause as puberty in reverse. So if you can imagine the estrogen level on the side, the age across the bottom. In puberty for the girl, the body gets flooded with hormones. Estrogen in particular is so important for the female body. And if it doesn't touch every hormone or every cell in the body, it has a conversation with it. So you can see it's a pretty rapid increase. We wouldn't dream of not preparing our children for puberty, nor ourselves. And in fact, the school curriculum covers that. We also give our teenagers a lot of leeway, male and female, because they're teenagers, they're going through puberty and so on. Yet, we're not educating ourselves about menopause, perimenopause, postmenopause. So then you have this whole area of sexual maturity, which I'd love to say was as smooth as that, but anyway, it goes up and down along the way. And then we get into the perimenopausal phase, menopause, postmenopause, and you see a massive dip in the estrogen levels, which remain at a very low level for the rest of our lives. So that's really what's going on. And it's no wonder we experience all these different symptoms. And as a parent, I remember saying when my child became a teenager, oh my God, where's my baby gone? Well, if women say this to us, is I don't recognize myself, my old self, I want my old self back. So that's really, really something important. So if I move on, this is our symptom checker that I referred to, and we can send on copies, but it's all about the mental and emotional symptoms, the physical symptoms, and the genitourinary symptoms. And the long-term impact is really important, which nobody really talks about either. The long-term impact of living in an estrogen deficient state. The impact is on the heart. Heart disease is the #1 killer of women in Ireland and globally, and 1 in 2 women will die of heart disease. The other area is osteoporosis. Now, obviously, this is an exaggerated picture, but the bone going from high density to low density, porous, osteopenia, osteoporosis. And then the other area is cognitive function. And basically, estrogen, I liken it to the oil in the engine. And as soon as the oil starts to deplete, the engine starts to stutter, shudder, and so on, and things start going wrong. It's the exact same in our bodies. There's a number of different treatment options available. Diet and lifestyle, I'd say, would be the cornerstone of that. So being overweight or obese is a huge risk that women probably underestimate. There's herbs and botanicals, although not a lot of evidence around this. There's transdermal HRT, for which there's a lot of evidence now. There's also non-hormonal medical. So some women can't take HRT or don't want to take HRT, and therefore there are non-hormonal medical solutions. There's cognitive behavioural therapy, which has proven to be very successful, and our psychologist in our clinic has trained with the British Menopause Society on using this technique for helping with insomnia, hot flushes, anxiety, and so on. And then there's the whole pelvic physio, because obviously pelvic floor is really, really important. So there's lots of treatment options. There's also other alternative therapies available. So women have no need to suffer in silence. They really should seek help. The incidence of the incidence of breast cancer and the risks with HRT are nothing like you would imagine. And if you can imagine the risks of breast cancer for being overweight or obese, or drinking alcohol, or 2 units or more a day, put you at greater risk. We need to change the way we think about this, about menopause, from a workplace perspective, from a safety and well-being perspective, from a performance perspective, and from a talent attraction and retention perspective. And legislation is coming in the UK, and in turn will come to Ireland. There's been a number of cases where in employer tribunals, where cases they have ruled in favour of menopausal women on the grounds of age or sex discrimination, or on the grounds of disability. There are lots of ways to help manage menopause in the workplace. Our programs do that. Raising awareness, this is one of those. Management and HR training, organizational support, appointing menopause champions, flexible and agile working, adopting kind of reasonable adjustments for staff. Temperature is really important. Restrooms, cold drinking water, uniform and work clothes. And I can imagine, I can't even imagine the impact of PPE on top of everything else. It's about opening up the conversation, becoming a supportive manager, and ultimately introducing a menopause in the workplace policy. And my last comment to make is that I think there's a massive role for women, for nurses and midwives in the area of menopause. We're actively recruiting. We'd love to hear from nurse prescribers and nurses. And I do think that there's an opportunity to change the face of menopause care in Ireland through the nursing community. So thank you for everything. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for that, Loretta. One of the questions you answered in the last slide about the practical things that managers can do, or the HSE can do, and certainly that the INMO can advocate for us. But I just wondered, I can pull one of the other questions. Do you have any events coming that will provide more information on the menopause?
Yes, on the 16th of December, International Menopause Day, or World Menopause Day, is on the 18th of October. Yes, there is such a day. And on the 16th of October, and I'll send the link afterwards, I'm running a conference with the Irish Menopause, which is an online support group. And we have a number of renowned international speakers speaking at that about menopause. And we're also running on the 13th of October an event for HR and senior managers around menopause in the workplace, and that's a free invite, and I can send you the links for that as well.
Right. So thanks, Loretta. We wish you all the best in your venture, meeting, I suppose, a very unmet need and reducing that taboo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invite.